The power of positive shared vision. Shared vision is part of the secret to motivation. Let's look at the formula for motivation according to organizational development expert and best-selling author Daniel Pink. In 2014, he wrote a book called Drive that was incredibly popular. And his formula for motivation, according to his research, began with purpose. Exactly what we're talking about, shared vision. In this presentation, I will interchange purpose and vision. But add to purpose autonomy, people getting to work together with autonomy rather than just taking directions or orders from the top, for instance. And mastery, meaning people need to be challenged and they need accomplishments. One thing that Daniel Pink did not put in his formula that more recently has been added to the research is the understanding of something that he took for granted, which is the need for connection. Especially now that we've experienced a pandemic, we understand more than ever that purpose, autonomy, and mastery don't really mean anything unless we are connected to one another and experiencing the positivity of those connections. Anyway, let's look specifically at purpose, because purpose can be an individual's purpose. We each need to individually feel like we have a purpose and a vision, but it exponentially multiplies when it's a group purpose or a group shared vision. Purpose and shared vision. What a powerful force. There's a whole science that grew up around organizational development, and it grew up out of the science of positive psychology. Psychology used to be mostly focused on deficits, people having problems. And more recently, there's been the science of understanding, well, what do we look like when we're well? What can we learn about being healthy and having well-being? What is the science of happiness? Part of what makes people happy is establishing a clear focus, having vision. So we're making this paradigm shift from a deficits model of corporations and organizations to a positive model of reframing problems as opportunities. And we're specifically going to look at science that was developed around an approach called appreciative inquiry. So appreciative inquiry is research that was created by David Cooperrider. David Cooperrider was doing his dissertation research at Cleveland Clinic. And like a lot of researchers, he had interview questions. He was going around and interviewing people about the clinic, about their experience at the clinic. And when he shared his research with his dissertation advisor was in disbelief, because with the questions that David Cooperrider was asking, the data that he was getting back sounded like Cleveland Clinic was an absolute mess, a terrible place to work. Patients were not being cared for properly or well. It sounded pretty miserable. But Cleveland Clinic was an award-winning clinic, an incredibly positive place with excellent results. So why was David Cooperrider's research turning up such negativity? Well, it turns out, A, you get what you're looking for, and B, when we try to fix things, we end up compromising our strengths. So if we're asking questions about what's wrong, what we're going to find out is what's wrong. And if we go about trying to make change by looking at our problems, we end up focusing on our problems rather than looking at what we really need to do. Often, when we look at our problems and then we set a strategic goal to fix a problem, what ends up happening is we compromise our strengths. Here's a personal example to demonstrate what I mean. When I was in high school as a basketball player, my strength was rebounding underneath the basket. But if I looked at the data, I definitely had a weakness of longer range shooting. So if I were to focus on my weakness and set a goal to do better at my longer range shooting, it's easy to understand how if I really focused on that, that would compromise my strength of being a great rebounder underneath the basket. Because I need to be spending time underneath the basket, and my team needs me to do that. They don't really need me to be focusing on my weakness as a longer range shooter. But as humans, we do this. We're constantly sort of putting out fires and reacting to problems that we have and problems that we see. Whereas if we emphasize our strengths, the problems often take care of themselves. And we build resiliency and joy from our strengths. So appreciative inquiry, which David Cooperrider went on to invent after this research, has to do with building upon our strengths. Before you do research, or before you set about goals, or before you create a shared vision for your organization, instead of look at the problems and only look at the problems, you need to first gather what the core strengths and the core values of the organization are and build on those so that you don't lose those. As his research continued on, he and other people, there are many studies on this, ended up discovering that in terms of our thinking and our communication, there's an ideal positive to negative ratio, which is about 80% positive to 20% negative. Some of the most famous research around this was done by Gottman, who interviewed married couples or couples who were about to be married. And he was able to collect data, and he found that couples who had a ratio of about 4-to-1 positive to negative in their communication with one another, their marriages survived. More negativity than that, those marriages had a difficult time. And this has to do even with our thinking. So pay attention to your thinking. How often do you have negative thoughts compared to positive thoughts? And if you're noticing that a larger share of your negative thoughts are more than 20%, that's something you might want to work on and changing so you can build off of your strengths and your positivity. Now, of course, the negative is still important as well. That 20% is important. We need to have a critical mind. We need to see what needs to be changed. But if we dwell on that, the research shows that doesn't lead to positive change. So the basic concepts of appreciative inquiry, or AI, not to be confused with artificial intelligence, is that what you seek, you find more of. If you seek innovation and ideas and positivity, that's what you're going to find. One of the second main concepts is that people commit to what they help create. So if you want to create a shared vision in an organization, well, again, that's not going to come from the top down. Everybody needs to be engaged in creating that vision. Well, how do you do that? That's a big task. Well, I'm going to share with you a story that comes from an organization I was involved with for many years. It was originally called Rainbow Mountain Children's School. We hired a consultant who trained us in appreciative inquiry, and we engaged in a year-long process of using appreciative inquiry to identify our positive core strengths, identify things that we wanted to change, and to move in a positive direction with a shared vision. Every single child at the school and every adult that we could possibly interview, as well as other community members, were interviewed one-on-one. And they were asked questions similar to the questions that you are going to ask people in your organization this week. Generative questions such as, what 3 wishes do you have for Rainbow Mountain? We held a large summit after we found out what our positive core strengths were, and created from that summit bold vision statements. One of the results of that venture was this image that was captured by a parent who was a graphic artist of our bold vision. And you can see this is in the areas of the future of Rainbow as a school, the future of education as a field, and what we want to see for our children. You can zone in on different parts of this and see how inspiring it was. People were so inspired and jazzed by identifying our strengths and from connecting with one another around this. We had visions of being a beacon for the world, for holistic education, for raising money, for developing our campus, and we wanted to create a community center for all of the town that we lived in, not just for our students. We wanted to expand from a local organization to become a national organization. We wanted our children to become problem solvers and thinkers who made a difference, change makers. From our shared vision, we then sat down and created a very ambitious strategic plan. Just to look at a small portion of the strategic plan, and included positive goals such as to stimulate and be a resource for an awakening to a national educational rebirth. These were not small goals. Again, we wanted to provide facilities that support the most effective learning for all children in the wider community. We wanted to build strong, connected, thriving relationships with the broader community, and so on. That vision was so powerful, within a year things happened that we couldn't even imagine. We thought that strategic plan was pie in the sky. I mean, really, it sounded like stuff that might never happen, but we wanted to throw it out there anyway. And lo and behold, within 1 year, we went from a small facility on 2 acres to more than doubling the size of our campus. The church next door to us became available, and we were able to raise the money and get the loans to buy. This is just one of the buildings that we were able to buy. It had an auditorium. And in that way and many other ways, our school was completely transformed. We changed the name of the school to Rainbow Community School. We adopted a new mission. We created a new vision. Our enrollment doubled within 2 years of creating that vision. That's how powerful a shared vision is. So how can you do this? Well, let's look at the difference between a problem or deficits approach to creating goals to a positive strengths-based approach. Here's a problem-solving approach. Let's take a problem that we want to look at. Let's say low performance. Okay, everybody, we're going to gather around. We want to write a strategic plan, set our goals. We've got some data here, and it looks like we have low performance. Let's focus on this and figure out what that means. We have absenteeism, low morale, some low productivity, dissatisfied customers, disengaged staff, poor quality patient care. Looks like these are some things we need to work on. As you listen to this, think about, how does this feel? Do you feel inspired to work on these things? Is this aspirational? Kind of reminds me of this cartoon from the New Yorker. Note to team, set your sights higher when formulating the mission statement. So you get a group together and ask them what their shared vision is. You have to be careful. You want to make sure that it's a positive approach. Let's turn this around and do some positive framing. Talk about what you want for the relationship, for your team, for your organization, instead of what you don't want. So let's look at this opportunity tree again. Instead of looking at low performance, what we want is high performance. What does that look like? We want well-being. We want high morale. We want productivity, satisfied customers. We want an engaged staff. We want high quality care. Now notice, how does that feel? Does that feel more inspiring? Are these things you want to go out and get and achieve with a group of people? Well, let's build some skills to learn how to do this. The skill of reframing, and you're going to do this week in your discussion question. The reframing technique is in your Conversations Worth Having book by Stavros and Sherry Torres. And you start with a problem or a negative impact, and then you flip that to the positive opposite, and then you reframe it to a desired outcome from the flip. So let me give you an example. Let's say our problem, we're at a school, is low attendance. The data shows low attendance. The positive flip, the exact opposite, is high attendance. Well, yeah, that's great, but that's not good enough. How do we turn this into something really generative and aspirational? What is it that we really want? Well, the reframe is, we want a school where children are engaged, where learning is fun, and they want to show up. And that becomes our goal or our shared vision when we work together. Now you try it. Again, you'll get to try this in your discussion question this week. Positive framing should not be mistaken for focusing only on the positive. Quite the contrary, this is about dealing with even the toughest issues in a way that motivates everyone to find creative solutions and take action. Flipping is a tool to help you take any problem or challenge and create a positive frame. It's a simple 3-step approach to move from a negative deficit-based frame to a positive frame. So in closing, we want to build on our core strengths and values. And that means gathering people together and really looking at what is the soul of your organization? What is unique to your context? Think about your culture, your histories, your stories, your symbols, and your rituals. Emphasize that strength. Model and amplify the spirit of your organization. As a leader, you want to hold that vision. You always want to focus on that broader vision and the reframe. You want to be the aspirational person that holds that vision and the why, the shared purpose, the shared vision for everybody to work toward.